Hey everyone, it's Saya back here again, and I'm going to be talking about the top 5 visual novels that I've played this past year. So, when I say this past year, I'm mainly talking about since summer 2018 or so, since that's when I kind of started playing visual novels again, and that means that it's been about a year since I've been really back into my visual novel craze after taking a little bit of a break, I guess you could say. I'm not going to be counting games that I have replayed, and I'm not going to be counting games that I've played the newer versions of, so Hakuoki is a game that I played on the PSP many years ago, and then this past year I've played Kyoto Winds and Edo Blossoms, and I'm not going to be counting that since it's pretty much the same game but with some more added content. I am also only going to be talking about games that I've played at least one completed route in, so I'm not going to be mentioning games where I haven't finished a route or where I haven't finished the main game or anything like that. I just want to count games that I have played quite a bit of and am pretty familiar with at this point and comfortable talking about. I'm including indie games as well just because some of them I really enjoyed and I feel like they deserve a spot on this list, or at least an honorable mention. So without further ado, let's get into the list. At number 5, we have Dead Wishes, which is on the PC. It's an indie romantic horror visual novel by the company Violet, and it came out earlier this year. I actually backed it on Kickstarter, and I was really happy that it was released super quickly. There also are going to be a lot more characters released as free updates to the base game, so that's something to look forward to in the future. The protagonist doesn't have a set gender, but you don't exactly select one at the start either. Characters just kind of use they/them pronouns and don't really acknowledge what the gender is. And another positive is that you can date people of either gender, so there's a very large cast that's only growing, and you can date guys or girls, doesn't really matter, and a lot of them are really fun characters. So far, I have played Vincent, Mateo, Sergio, and Clement. Not all of them felt necessarily dark. These 4 were all in varying degrees of darkness, I'd say, in their roots, and one of them actually had nothing dark or horror-esque in it at all. Another route also didn't really have horror in it, except for one of the bad endings, which was pretty dark. One route was dark, but kind of an expected amount, with a few moments that made me raise my eyebrows, but not super out there. And then one character was, wow, okay, they just took the scale up to 11 right there. That was a lot, and I have never seen some of that kind of stuff in this type of visual novel, especially non-18 plus ones. I don't think I've seen it in really any visual novel either, but who knows, maybe I just haven't played enough in my life. I've enjoyed what I've played for the most part, but I did feel like a lot of the endings were a little bit abrupt and they could have been written a tiny bit better. The character whose personality I liked the best had the most boring route. He was sweet, but nothing really happened, and I was a little bit disappointed. The endings just kind of were an ending, they just happened. If the endings had a little bit more development to them and routes were a little bit more consistent, then this probably would have ranked higher, but at the same time, it's an indie visual novel from a small team and it's quite cheap. It gives you a lot and it's for sure worth it. I really enjoy dark content in my visual novels, and I love it when horror and romance are mixed together, so this sounded like the perfect visual novel for me. Sure, it could have been better, but I still feel really satisfied with what I got. I am never going to forget messaging my friends while playing this game about how a character in it tried to feed the protagonist's own leg to them. It was a really interesting route, and maybe that wasn't even the weirdest part. It was really weird as a whole, but I kind of liked it and thought it was fun, and I'm never gonna forget that route. So yeah, that's Dead Wishes as number 5. Number 4 is Danganronpa V3 on PS Vita, PC, and PS4. A group of students participate in a killing game where they need to determine who the killers are as they slowly die off one by one. Okay, let me be transparent here. I did not love Danganronpa V3. It's my least favorite entry in the series, and I thought the ending was massively disappointing. And if I'm gonna be honest, a little bit disrespectful to the series as a whole. V3 also has my least favorite cast, trials, and humor in general. But at the same time, it kinda rekindled my love for Danganronpa. I first started reading Danganronpa on the Something Awful forums back in 2013 or so. I was like 14 or 15 years old and I freaking loved it. This was before the anime was even announced, although it was announced later that summer, and I was very ecstatic, and it was before any of the games were released in English as well. So to see it come this far is pretty astounding. I had read the first game online, and I read most of the second game online too, but it wasn't totally finished being translated yet from what I remember, and I think a paywall had gone up at that point too, so I never finished 2. I finished V3 in late January, early February of 2019 or so, and I've been totally in love with Danganronpa since. I think it's a really flawed series, but it's still special to me and I adore it. I've mostly been into 2 ever since playing V3, and I've cosplayed as different versions of Sonya Nevermind. I've made an Ida bag dedicated to my favorite Danganronpa pairing, and basically I've just been really active in the Danganronpa cosplay communities. I've made so many new friends from the series just within the past few months alone, and it's amazing. So, okay, I do not love V3, but I felt like it should be on this list solely based on what it's done for me in general. I I like V3 because it made me revisit the rest of the series. Number 3 is Euphoria on the PC. A group of students participate in a killing game. Okay, it's not really a killing game, it's more of a game involving not safe for work activities that sometimes may result in death if people do not follow the rules. Let me explain this one. This game grosses me out, and rightfully so, but it's very special to me, okay? Summer of 2018, I went to Otakon. It was the first big convention I had gone to in a few years because I took a hiatus from cosplay and conventions and visual novels and a lot of things. I've been a huge visual novel fan since 7th grade, and now I'm about to enter my final year in college. The first visual novel I ever played was Saya no Uta, and in case you can't tell from my username, it forever cemented itself as one of my favorite pieces of fiction. I was way too young to play it, but it had a great story, so what can you do? Anyways, flash forward to last summer, I found out that Manga Gamer was gonna be at Otakon. I already owned digital copies of Oz Mafia and Fashioning Little Miss Lonesome from them, so I was vaguely familiar with their site. I knew that I wanted to buy hard copies of those games though, since I collect physical copies of Otome games. Also, other visual novels, but I try to be a bit of a completionist with Otome games since there aren't as many as just generic visual novels. I was looking at what else Manga Gamer was going to be selling at Otakon, and I remembered that they had Euphoria. I knew a tiny bit about Euphoria because I had seen a couple of tamer clips from the anime, and I just in general really liked the aesthetic of the game. So I decided, hey, I'm gonna buy Euphoria at Otakon, and it became kind of a meme between my friends and I. I knew the special content the game had, and they all knew it too. So Otakon comes around, I buy the game, and I explicitly remember the person selling it to me giving me a smirk and going, good choice. I then slowly started playing it, and I felt really invested in the characters, but especially Nemu Manaka. Since then, I've gotten 2 of my friends to cosplay from it with me, and one of my other friends wants to cosplay from it with us in the future. At MagFest, I was Nemu with Akane and Rine, and Manga Gamer retweeted a picture of us, which made my entire life. I really love their company, so that was exciting for me. And through my enormous passion for Euphoria, I've convinced multiple new people to play it, and people just generally associate me with it now. I don't know how to feel about that. The content of the game is still pretty uncomfortable and stomach-churning, but other times the dialogue is so over the top that I cannot help but burst out laughing and quote it to my friends constantly. I won't say which route this happens in, but my favorite dialogue moment includes a character getting a pig stuffed animal shoved into her butt, and then she pretends it's a baby she's giving birth to as she poops it out. And weirdly enough, that's one of the few scenes that has no actual poop in it. It's gross, but the dialogue during it is some of the funniest stuff I've ever read in a visual novel. All in all, Euphoria is a game with complicated characters that I found myself caring about. Sure, there are 2 characters I am not a huge fan of, but it's a great game if you can stomach the weird scenes that happen pretty often. Number 2, Bad Apple Wars on the PS Vita. Picture Angel Beats, but as an Otome game. A group of students live in purgatory-like school, and they're fighting against those who try to tell them to accept their own death. I went in with pretty low expectations because people don't generally have high praises for this game, so I was really surprised when I couldn't put it down. Yes, the writing is not amazing. Yes, the pacing could be a bit better. Yes, some of the endings were a little odd. Yes, some of the characters maybe need a tiny bit more development, but I cried so hard at so many different moments. I grew to be really attached to each one of the characters, and I found something nice about the entire cast, even the side characters. People who don't even like this game agree that the side characters really shine, and they have some super believable friendships. The game has some of my favorite endings because I'm a sucker for sad or melancholic stuff, and the artwork is some of my favorite that I've seen in any visual novel. There's some people who complain that the protagonist is bland and frustrating, but I actually really liked her. Rinka, the protagonist, often talks about how empty she feels, and some players took that a little too literally, I think. She just seemed like a really depressed, lonely girl to me, and I've been in that spot before, so I related to her. Other people feel this way about her too, though, so I am not the only one. A cool part of the game is that you can side with either the prefects, those who want people to accept their death and lose their individuality, or you can side with the bad apples, those who are rebelling against their school and prefects. Based on which side you pick, Rinka's outfit changes. Another slightly controversial part of the game is the soul touch moments. There aren't too many choices to make in the game, so it's more of a matter of those soul touch scenes that determine your ending. If you're familiar with Fire Emblem Fates at all, they're kind of like the petting scenes, but a little weirder. In these scenes, the game cuts to a cute CG, and then suddenly the love interest and Rinka are not wearing any clothing. It's all censored and not really meant to be sexual, but it's still kind of weird. Then you're supposed to touch the love interest in the correct spots, and each time you touch him, he says something to you. If you touch the correct places, then you learn about his past a little bit and you're on the right path to a good ending. If you touch the wrong parts that they don't like, then you'll get the bad ending. It's unusual, but I kind of liked it and thought it was a fun feature to make things a little bit different and spice it up. Bad Apple Wars is not a perfect game by any means, but it stood out to me and included a lot of different features that were really unique and I enjoyed a lot. I adore the entire cast of characters, and I often go back to replay certain scenes that were very memorable. Here are some honorable mentions before we get to the number 1 game. Sweetest Monster on PC. Collar X Malice on the PS Vita. Planetarium on PC. Just kidding, there isn't one game at number 1, there are actually 2. Number 1 is a tie between The House and Fata Morgana on the PC and Psychedelica of the Black Butterfly on PS Vita and PC. I tried to place one of these over the other, but I really just cannot do that. Neither one is perfect, like many of the games on this list, but they're so close to perfect to me that the flaws barely bother me and I don't notice them at all. The basic premise of The House and Fata Morgana is that you stumble upon an old mansion and meet the maid. She claims that she's been waiting for you, and then she proceeds to tell you the different stories of people who have lived in this house and the tragedies that befell them. The gist of Psychedelica of the Black Butterfly is that Benny Yuri wakes up in a mansion, unfamiliar with where or who she is. She meets a few other people, all in the same situation, and they try to figure out the mystery of this mansion and the monsters in it. So, they're both darker games with a creepy, mysterious mansion. I clearly have a type. Love is definitely a huge theme in both of them, but neither one is really a dating sim. Fata Morgana for sure is not a dating sim or anything like that, but characters fall in and out of love, and that's a fairly important thing across the different stories. Psychedelica is technically an otome game, but it's unusual, and the roots aren't really traditional roots. There definitely is romance, but it's much more subtle and not really too much of a pick a guy and date him, woo, happy ending kind of thing. And I'm someone who highly values the romantic content in my otome games, but let me tell ya, Psychedelica did not disappoint. It balanced the plot and romance perfectly. They're both tragic games, so do not go in expecting to leave completely dry-eyed. I cried harder in Psychedelica, I think, but I teared up way more often in Fata Morgana. Both games had me crying multiple times though, and they really had a huge emotional impact on me. Each game has such a top-notch cast of characters who all have believable motives and morals, and they all feel really fleshed out. Although I will admit, my favorite boy in Psychedelica probably has the least development, and I feel like he definitely has the short end of the stick in that way. It's okay, Kurasaba, I still love you, you beautiful trash gremlin you. Both games include one character I really do not like, and anything I say specifically about either character in either one of these games could be a massive spoiler, so let me say this much. I don't hate Jacobo in Fata Morgana. I don't hate Hikage in Psychedelica. I definitely do not like them though, and they are my least favorite characters, so it's not fun when they're the 2 fan favorites. These games have so many twists and turns that really work out best when you go blind, so I won't say much more. Although I did have one major plot point in Fata Morgana ruined for me. When I was at the Manga Gamer booth at Otakon, one of the employees there was trying to sell Fata Morgana to someone, and they said, yep, this game has a blank protagonist. I won't say what the adjective they used was, but that meant I kept trying to look for that while playing the game, and the big reveal did not have as much of an impact as it could have had. I bought Psychedelica of the Black Butterfly in the early summer of 2018 during the Summer of Mystery, and it was one of the first few otome games I'd played in a while. I didn't expect it to move me as much as it did, but here we are. And I'm currently working on an Ida bag dedicated to it. One half of the bag is solely Kurasaba, my favorite character, and the unfinished half is dedicated to the rest of the characters. And with Fata Morgana, I have a pretty interesting story of how I first got it. It had been on my to-play list since that time at Otakon, but I never really had a chance to buy it. It was often on sale on Steam, but I wanted a physical copy, so that meant I waited and never took the initiative myself. One day I was working and a coworker and I started talking about visual novels. He said that he only owns 2 of them, one being Katawa Shoujo and the other Fata Morgana. I was really surprised to hear that, since it's a bit of an obscure game, especially for someone who does not frequent visual novels, but I told him about how I've always meant to play it and that it's supposed to be amazing. A couple weeks later, he shows up with a hard copy of the game and he gives it to me. It was surprising to say the least. Normally I finish visual novels within a few days, but this one took way longer because it's been my busiest semester ever, and it's just kind of a long game in general. Any free time I had, I would try to play it. and I finally finished it. I'm forever grateful that I just happened to get it from someone, and I can't wait to play the sequel. There's so much more I could say about both of these games, but I wanted to keep it as short as possible, which already is not that short. If you like tragically beautiful, somewhat unsettling, and eerily romantic visual novels, then these two are for you. They really stand out from anything else I've played, and they now rank in my top 3 visual novels of all time alongside Saya no Uta. And so that's it, the top 5 visual novels, or I guess top 6 visual novels that I've played in the past year that were my absolute favorites. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you all enjoyed the video.